Hey, welcome to Discard. Recently, I was inspired to make a miniature version of my own game collection. I really got into this. I love making things, so let's take a look. So to start things off talking about this miniature collection and how it came into being, I just want to say that there's a couple channels out there that were definite inspirations for this kind of thing. One of those channels is called Craftsman Steady Craftin', and this guy makes some amazing miniatures. He does some claymation and stop motion animation, a lot of making of really cool items, so definitely check out his channel. He had a really cool video on making this kind of miniature set for one of the figures that he had created, and it was really cool. And the other channel that is really inspiring is Late Night Reviews. This guy goes out of his way to make these cardboard versions of these kind of retro style things. I believe right now he's working on a set for Alien, and he's remaking Alien in cardboard completely. He's done NES games and all sorts of other video games as well, completely made out of cardboard, and has a complete full set made out of cardboard that makes it look like it's the 1980s, and it's just really cool. So definitely check out both those channels and the amazing work that they do. So the first thing that I did when I was going to make this game room is I made a little IKEA Kallax shelf. And I made this shelf and I kind of posted it up on Patreon and showed it to people, and people were really stoked about it. They thought it was pretty cool, and I don't think they understood how far I was going to get into this and in depth with this project. So slowly over time, I started building things into that shelf, adding games to the shelf and adding different doodads to it to make it look more like my game room and very similar to that environment. Now when it comes to materials, a lot of my materials were inspired by one of the display ideas that I had recently on the show, where I talked about rising up different games in your shelves and kind of modifying those shelves to however you want them. And I was using foam core board to do that, and that gave me a lot of hands-on experience with using foam core board and cutting it up and making things out of it. So I thought this was a perfect example of a place to use foam core board to make the majority of different things. After I got the basic structure of the Kallax shelves, I got 2 of those made, and then I also made the stand for the television, and I had to kind of find a way to color it properly. I think I used some gray paper to cover up the top so it would kind of look like that wood top that I have on my TV stand. And as for the television itself, I 3D printed that. Thingiverse is a wonderful resource. You can go on that website and find all sorts of different things that you can simply print out, and you'd be amazed at all the different things that are on there. But they had a television on there, and I can take that television and modify its size and then add that onto my stand to make it look like it belongs in the room. To add a little flair to the TV, I searched online for a screen out of Streets of Rage, and then I pasted that inside of the TV and then added a little bit of plastic over the top to give it kind of a shine to it. And all of that's non-permanent. If in the future I want to take that off and put like a green screen in there so I can have a video playing in this room, as it's a tiny miniature set, it might be a really good way of doing that as well. And I'll kind of pause to say that there's a lot of engineering going on here. It's not the most amazing feat of engineering, but you do have to kind of think about how things are going to work. The little doors on the front of the TV stand we're going to need to open and close, so I had to figure out how that's going to glue together so that they would kind of flap open and close and look similar enough to the TV stand that I have in my game room already. And if you do plan to DIY one of these yourself, you don't have to necessarily think about all those little details and making it absolutely perfect. The art on video games does not have to be exactly like the art on your video games that are in your collection or anything like that. It just has to be close enough that when somebody glances at it, it looks like your game collection. So the third thing that I started working on after the TV stand and the Kallax shelves was the larger shelves in there. And these are Billy bookcases from IKEA in my actual collection. And I actually ran into a lot of problems with these. These are beyond not perfect. I ended up trying to spray paint them because I ended up using a lot of glue in there, and I wanted to cover that up with some color and kind of make it all white again. And unfortunately, when I spray painted it, it ate the foam that's inside of the foam core. Spray paint and foam core don't really work well together, not to mention it also makes it so it warps. So in a lot of the parts of this project, you'll see warping and little mistakes here and there. But overall, I think that when you do end up looking at the entire project, it kind of mirrors what it's supposed to be. And in the end, it was just a lot of fun anyway. So really this was kind of a passion project that I was working through, and I didn't want to go back and redo these shelves at that time. I kind of wanted to just move forward and start making some of these fun little doodads that went along with it. I wanted to make some of the figures and different things that are in the collection and make it really look like the game room. So after I'd created kind of all of these main pieces of furniture for the room, I made the entire room itself and kind of cut some large pieces of foam core board and put them together. I also painted them, and they ended up being warped as well, and that's kind of just unfortunate, but the way it needs to be. And it doesn't look too bad if you're looking at it straight on. It's not that big of a deal. But just getting those big pieces of foam core board put together made it look really nice, like it's its own room. And that allowed me to work on some other things like painting the walls or adding carpet to the floor with using a little bit of fabric there. I think adding things like that felt fabric to the floor and kind of keeping in mind that felt's kind of rough, kind of like a carpet would be at that scale. It's a really good choice for putting down on the floor, and it makes it really pop. And then also adding a little bit of trim around the base of the room was a really nice feature that I like to have in there, because the room does have that base trim around it, and I think it gives it that feeling that it's a real room. Now outside of those two things, the only thing left to do was add a couple windows to the wall. And all I did was cut a couple rectangles out of the wall in the right spots. I kind of did loose measurements on all of this stuff to kind of scale it. I started with the Kallax shelf, and that became my base unit for figuring out what the scale of everything was. If something was bigger than one of those cube style shelves by a little bit, then I could kind of guesstimate what the size would be in this scenario. And as a side note, the windows also do have a piece of plastic in them. You can get this plastic at most of your craft stores. One of the best pieces of plastic that I found works great for this kind of project or making windows is cake boxes. Craft stores sell cake boxes so that you could bake cakes and then have a specialized box like they would have at your grocery store, and they always have that plastic cover on the top so you can see the cake. And I would buy those, and they're really inexpensive compared to buying the model plastic, which is a ton more expensive. So just getting these cake boxes saved me quite a bit of money and worked fantastic for those windows and other things that I had throughout this project. Now, one of the things that I knew I was gonna have to have if I was gonna really sell this as a miniature game room was the background above the television. And I have a bunch of these collector mount mounts holding a bunch of different types of game items on that wall behind my TV. So it took a little bit of doing, but essentially what I did was take pictures of that wall and all the items that were on it, and then I sized them down to scale, and then I would print them off and then attach them into a cardstock and then cut them to size, attach a little piece of board to the back side of them so they would kind of pop off the wall. It would make them look a little bit more 3D. And then since I had some amiibo boxes on there and some other plasticized boxes on there, I added some of that model plastic on there to kind of give that effect that the amiibo boxes did have that piece of plastic jutting out of the front. I think those little details really add a lot to this kind of thing. Even if they're not perfect, if you look up close at those amiibo boxes, they are pretty rough. But from a distance, it looks pretty nice and kind of really sells what this is. Now, when we get back to talking about the games themselves, my method for making these games was taking this kind of cardstock paper and then cutting it to a size that I thought that the games would be. So for instance, I would take the Nintendo Switch games and I would cut them to size, and then I would put them all in a stack and kind of paint it all red, and then individually take each and every single one of them and put little dots and blobs on there to look like writing was on the edge of these games. Of course, to make them all uniform, you put a little white dot at the top of each one in order to make it look like there's a Nintendo Switch logo there, and that kind of really sells it from a distance as well. But essentially, I took that method and took it across the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube games, the PS4 games, and kind of use that in order to make it a simpler way of making a ton of different games. Even though it's a simpler way, it still took several hours to get all of these games made and cut and then glued in place. Now, there's definitely a lot of little things going on in this project, and I probably won't cover them all and how I made them, but a lot of the method that I used was taking a picture of the item and then printing it out. And using that for the Starlink ships, for instance, worked fantastic. It looks pretty good. I wish they were perfect 3D Starlink ships because I love those ships in real life, but at the time I wasn't going to sit there and model each one out of clay, and that's really what I would need to do. Some of the specialty items in here took longer than others. There's a little TV in one of my Kallax shelves, and that took a little bit of time to try to figure out how I was going to do that, if I wanted to light it up later, if I could model it so that I could do that, and there was a lot of things I had to think of while making that one. Probably more difficult was the controller display that I have. It's got a bunch of arms on it, and each arm has to have its own controller, and that's kind of a structure that I had to figure out and put together. And another cool item is the record player that's on one of the Kallax shelves. I really like how this ended up looking. I mean, these things don't look fantastic up close, but they really sell it from a distance and make it look a lot like the game room as it is in real life, and I really love those little details. Now, you might have noticed that there's some consoles in here and some controllers that look very close to what they're supposed to look like, and all of those have been 3D printed as well. I found an awesome user on Thingiverse, and he had a ton of miniatures of all of these different things, and essentially I took all of those and printed them out, and then after I would print them, I would hand paint them individually to make them look very similar to what they were in real life. But overall, I'm pretty happy with what went on here. The very last thing that I did on this project was actually add lighting to it. So in the back, I cut holes, and then I added some LED strips to the back so I could get that classic blue lighting that I like to have in my game room. I think the lighting is the cherry on top. It super sells it, to me at least, that this is a real collection and that somebody is collecting games and putting them on these shelves, and this is a real place. And lastly, I have to say that if you do plan on making a miniature like this, which maybe you're not, this is kind of a really weird project to be talking about, but I really like the little broken details in there. I like stuff to be a little bit off, have controllers kind of laying out in there. It's a little bit messy, like somebody left some games on top of other games or something like that. Maybe there's a little dirt on the floor or something. Just having it be a little bit off, it really helps it to look awesome. If this was absolutely perfect and everything was cut perfectly, I don't think it would sell it as well as it would just look like a perfect model. And that's not necessarily what I was going for. I wanted to use this as a set possibly in the future for something, or a background. I am not quite sure what I'm going to do with this. It was just kind of a passion project that I fell in love with. So I hope you guys are okay with me sharing with this kind of weird stuff with you once in a while. I'm working on a do-it-yourself stand as well. That is quite amazing, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. But this kind of stuff is fun for me, so adding this into the normal thing that we do here on Discard is kind of fun. And then before I say goodbye, I wanted to let you guys know that I have been doing a little bit of streaming at some ungodly hours over on twitch.tv/disc_cart. And you can find me there sometimes late at night playing games. Recently I've been playing Ni no Kuni 2 on there, and then coming soon I'll probably be playing some Astral Chain. So you can check me out there if you want to come and hang out. Right now it's just kind of a test thing. I figured I'm already playing video games, so why not stream it? And it's been a lot of fun talking with people. So thanks for coming and checking out Discard today. If you have any other ideas for displaying things in a game room or game collection, please let me know in the comments below. I'm always looking for more ideas. If you want to help out Discard past a subscription, please check out patreon.com/discard and check out all the awesome stuff you can get for $2 a month. Most recently, we added an after show to the Discard Patreon, where essentially right after this show, I film another show where I talk about why this came to be and different challenges that came from making it, as well as different things of behind the scenes. So feel free to check that out. But if you like this video, please leave a like. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. But otherwise, have a great day and collect what you love.
I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm going in circles, going in circles. I should get away from here. There's a better place for me, better place for me. Trying to play my symphony, but there's so much noise around, so much noise around. Constantly fighting for space. I need to clear my mind, need to clear my mind. I wanna be empty, be empty.